Could you walk me through the security setup for the event?
Sure.
Who's placed where, what you guys are seeing?
Yeah, so we come in and we look at setup in the mornings. And like I said earlier, the guys are all part of it. So there's intimate knowledge. Every guy has intimate knowledge of the setup. So we come in, we do the placement of where Charlie's going to speak from. And that's kind of like the ground zero. And then we build out from that. And people in the security industry, you have this thing called the concentric circle of security theory, right? And it doesn't have to be a circle. It could be a line or a moving box or however you want to work it. And you have zones, and you have a permeable zone, a semi-permeable zone, and a non-permeable zone. And so you can come in on the fly and set up these zones. And so we come in and we set this up. So Charlie's tent and was on that right in the middle, and then we start. So you want to start at the very back, and so we started with a non-permeable zone, but it was one of those ones where it's mainly visual, and it's just tape across this arrival section, and all it is caution tape, but it's just to keep good people good. That's it, and we know that. And so, so that's just to let people, the foot traffic out, that we know people won't come in there, so that if somebody's doing something bad, they stick out. Mm-hmm. And then inside that zone, we place our vehicles, and you can kind of see it on the aerial, or you can see it when you see the footage. We put those vehicles behind Charlie's where he's speaking for a reason that day. It's called CPTED, Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. A worry was that somebody would come down that same driveway and just run him over from the back, or run people over. So you stack those vehicles so that the vehicles are being used kind of like big HESCOs or something.
Barricades.
Yeah, barricades. And so that people can't get to him that way. And then we start, then technically that's, semi-permeable. We still cover it. It's like, hey, people could walk through there, but they have to be knowns. And then we went with hard bike racks. So hard bike racks then that come all the way across the back, and they're linked together, and so those bike racks keep people from coming in and out unless they're vetted, and that's where you would start the non-permeable zone. And then we put a guy there, and he physically is there to watch that. And his job, that's his area of responsibility, is he's back cover. He's making sure people aren't coming up from behind us. He's making sure that the right people can come in and out. They don't have to be back there. And we're not talking about a large area. We're talking an area that was maybe 100 feet across, maybe more. And then there was also a police officer back there. We didn't request him to be there, but he showed up. And so we're like, hey, might as well utilize you. And so he just held the position on the far left side. And then you got where the tent is. And then that's kind of where to get into the meat and potatoes of it, because number one rule of protection detail work is evade and escape. It is. If we can evade or escape any threat without having to confront it, it's a win. Mm-hmm. I told you that time about getting shot at with a shotgun. I was pissed because I didn't get to shoot the guy back. And went back to the PD, and I'm throwing shit and whatever. And my sergeant said, hey, man, you won. You didn't get shot at, or you didn't get shot. He's in jail. You won. Well, that's kind of the way you have to look at that stuff in protection work. It's like, hey, let's evade and escape. And so things are set up that way. And so you have where Charlie sits, and then you have a guy right next to him. And that person's solely responsible for, in times of need, pushing him, moving him, getting him out of that line of fire, or that those actions, escape and evade, throwing him into that exfil vehicle that's parked right behind where we're at. And then you'll see we ran two double barricades. And those barricades are presidential style barricades. They're hooked in, the same kind you see the Secret Service use. And so we have an outer layer, and that first layer is just to let everybody know, hey, you can't cross this. And they're physically, keeps them from pushing over them. And if somebody comes over the top of them, you can see it just from the mere elevation change. And then we create a secondary row of them with a gap in the middle of it. And that gap in the middle, though we didn't like it, he liked that because that was able to show, hey, there's nothing between us, right? There's nothing between us. Let's carry out this conversation. But so I have two guys that are at that gap. When they come up, and one of them's a measure of a man who has physical capabilities that are incredible. And then the one on the right side is a jiu-jitsu guy, a world-renowned professor. And so their job is if somebody tries to press through that gap or get close to him, then they're going to hold them up. And then just off their flanks are two other guys, and Blake and Blake. And those guys' sole job is to control access into that alley. And also, if somebody tries to breach the integrity of those two guys, they're there to apply violence so that they can hold that and we won't weaken our stance. So those jobs are a response to apply violence on those people that are trying to weaken our stance. And then they're also access control into that little alley we've created. That alley creates a secondary gap, but it also allows us to vet people, make sure, nope, you can't bring packages in, no water bottles, check for protrusions, all that. And so when they come through there, and they're the gatekeeper there, right? So on that one side, he comes in, he makes sure, and then they come down, they passes off to the next guy, and he comes up to the microphone and speaks. And then when he's done, he goes out the other side. And that guy makes sure he moves on. And then the guy, Blake, on the other side, makes sure he goes all the way out. And so they have, those guys are dual rolled, where they're there. If these guys have problems, they're going in to apply violence so that we don't lose any integrity of our protection so we can facilitate escape. And then they're also gatekeepers. Mm-hmm. And then you get deeper in the crowd, and there's the guys that what they're looking for is walk-ups. The guys that are walking up close.
They're in the crowd.
They're in the crowd. They're working.
Plain clothes.
They're plain clothes. They're working in the crowd. And Rick's over there. And Rick's job is to watch what's going on here and then turn and apply and look at the line. And you look for things like military-age males that aren't having social contact with other people. Mm-hmm. Right, so they're up there, but there's no looking around. There's no talking. They got prey gaze on the guy who's talking. No blinking. So there's a hard prey gaze, no blinking, or when you get closer, it's like excessive blinking, and so that's a good tell right there of a pre-incident indicator of violence. These guys are out there doing that. All of them are doing it in real time, and you're looking for that.
And how many of those guys are there?
We have. In that, right, so far, we've gone through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Six.
All right, and then we got those guys out in the crowd. We got Scott working it over on the flank to make sure people from above are not throwing rocks down on people. Chris is over there with them. You got Justin and Alex holding that hard line. You got response to violence guys right here. You got intel gather, a guy out here, and making sure there's no walk-ups and or people that would walk up and physically want to apply violence in close proximity. And then you start we had to rotate some guys because we had people coming in and exactly doing that. Started pushing up signs, started chanting, started creating distraction and making problems. So we pushed a couple guys over just to keep an eye on that. And those are guys that are doing direct reporting. So they're the ones that are saying, hey, it's 14 of them, or they're just doing signs. And so they're giving us real intel in real time.